to talk about the issues as they stand and how hopeful one can be of speedy resolution. Suhas Harinarayanan of Relicare, who tracks that space. In a bit, Ashok Khurana will join in as well. Gentlemen, morning to both of you. Suhas, let me start off with you in terms of what you read of the news flow so far and how you think it may impact some of these private power players.
Yeah, hi. These meetings should have happened probably almost 6-7 months back. Frankly, it's good that it's happening now, but we could have done away with a lot of pain in the last 6 to 7 months. To that extent that some of these private power companies are probably pricing in steep discounts or even bankruptcy issues. To that extent, it's been a big positive for them. In terms of implementation, how far this will take, etc. There are clearly some easy steps and there are clearly some difficult steps. I think the easier ones would be probably getting Coal India to sign a fuel supply agreement, plus tweaking some laws to ensure some pass-through of some higher imported coal, etc. I think those will be the easier ones. But of course, the tougher ones will be, going forward, how to ensure Coal India actually is able to meet those volumes, or and probably the most difficult one going ahead is going to be how to change the working of the state electricity boards to ensure that they actually are at least able to make cash profits or stop making cash losses. I think some of those things are just going to take a lot of time, and I think by then we probably enter into FY14, into the next round of elections, when again people buying power at begin buying power at crazy prices, and again SEB losses go into a spiral. So I think for the next, our view has been that as I said, these things should have happened about 6 to 7 months, but at the same time we do have a small window, at least over the next 12 to 18 months, where a lot of steps can be taken, given that the next or the noise around general elections are still at least 12 to 18 months, which should at least stabilize the system as of now. But fundamentally, from a 5-year perspective, do you think private IPPs will make a lot of money? I wouldn't bet my money on that.
Some important news on Tech Mahindra. Apparently, the IT deal with Etisalat has been called off. More details on the size of that deal will come up for you shortly, but it will have an impact on Tech Mahindra. It seems like the IT deal which they had signed with Etisalat has been called off, an obvious outcome perhaps of what's been happening in the telecom space and the shutdown announced by many of these foreign companies. Ashok Khurana of the Association of Power Producers joins in as well. They have been part of those meetings with the Prime Minister's office. Mr. Khurana, morning. Thanks for joining in. First, one word on this 80% FSA that was decided the last time round. In this meeting, any headway in terms of the doability of it, whether or not there were going to be some hurdles on how Coal India could actually source that much of coal, whether importing it would actually raise prices for power companies?
See, my idea is the Coal India will meet this directive of PMO by A, augmenting the domestic coal base, and B, by importing. See, the government is already considering to take extra coal from state government and central government mines, and also ask Coal India to increase their production. Thirdly, we suggested that many private mines also, where they have excess coal, and we have a mismatch between the power project and the mine development. Now, if you recall, the issue was stuck only on the pricing issue. At what price will the coal be transferred? In this meeting, looking at the pricing issue, we have suggested a new concept of coal banking, because that developer anyway would need that coal in future for conversion to power. So as in power we have banking, we have suggested the entire coal which we can produce in 12 plants and which don't need it can be taken by the CIL, given to those who have a deficit of coal, and when we, the developer who has given coal needs the coal, is given back to him. That obviates the need for fixing any price and any controversy around that issue.
What specifically got covered in terms of ground at yesterday's meet, Mr. Khurana? Because I believe that issues such as coal pricing were discussed, as also introducing differential tariff rates. Any rough decision to that regard?
See, there cannot be a decision on that meeting. The meeting is meant to discuss, put forward our views and hear their views. The decision-making process in any government system follows a process and which takes time. But The fact that we were heard and we were told that the suggestions we have made are practical and will be considered seriously, that's enough. And having seen earlier action of government of signing FSA, that's pending for last 2 years, we are sure that these issues can be resolved because they are not very difficult. If you really see, if they import coal, the imported coal is not going to be more than 8 to 10% of the entire base over there. And if you distribute that cost into entire base, the differential is not very significant on the power pricing. However, if this is limited to only those projects who are using imported coal, then the differential would be significant.
Suhas, how doable does it seem to implement any such suggestion on differential tariffs during peak hours? Because this quarter round, many power companies actually had pretty poor results to show for themselves, and it wasn't just about raw material pressures.
I think discounting the results, I think, for whatever reasons they showed those results, some of it was clearly a negative surprise. I think as Mr. Khurana had highlighted, I think implementing the FSAs is clearly the, easier part, and, we were also clearly positively surprised by the outcome of that meeting. As I had mentioned earlier, I think the challenge is clearly going to be how to, get Coal India to increase coal production, because based on whatever checks we've done, it looks like quite a difficult task to even go from this 440 million tons of production next year. And secondly, from a pricing perspective, as Mr. Khurana rightly pointed out, I think 8 to 10% blending of imports with local coal is not going to significantly increase your tariffs, or it's not going to increase your fuel cost materially. So I don't think that's that's a problem. I think it will be more about how does Coal India handle the whole logistics of importing. Because it's not an easy task. How different people will need different blending levels, and that's probably the whole logistics part of it. That's probably the more difficult part. But I think blending 10% and blending it with 90% domestic coal, I don't think the pricing and cost pressures are going to be significant.
Some analysts have pointed out, Suhas, that this is creating uneven ground for private players versus what's happening with the public guys. For instance, that NTPC is forced to sell at a capped rate, whereas things are being made easier now for some of the private power players. Would you say that this balance may be brewing?
No, I think you can see it in the results. I don't think NTPC is going to make a cash loss or is going to earn a return which is less than the cost of equity. I think their ROE will always remain for new projects is going to be 15.5% plus. While for the private players, the ROE can be anything. So I don't think there is there's an uneven field, because even the FSA agreement, at least I didn't see it anywhere in the PMO directive that the FSAs are going to be signed only for private players. It says FSAs will be signed for all those who have letters of assurance, and NTPC is probably the largest holder of letter of assurance from Coal India. So I don't think it has created an uneven playing field at all. In fact, when I look through the next few years, I think NTPC's competitive position has just improved significantly, given the state of financial distress that the private operators are in. I don't think the private operator will have the confidence and the financial ability. I'm talking about majority of them. I'm sure there must be one or two like Jindal Steel and Power or Tata Power who can still go ahead and put up new power plants. But a lot of the other private players are unlikely to have the financial muscle to go and invest in another 3,000 megawatt of power plants. But NTPC's, so while the ROE you could argue that theoretically it would come off a little bit, but I think in its ability to add new generation capacity just increased significantly.
Mr. Khurana, I believe the APP also yesterday recommended that there be preferential gas allocation to power projects that were recommended by the Power Ministry themselves, and there is an EGOM on gas allocation scheduled tomorrow. Are you hopeful of a positive resolution on that front, or that the government will choose to lean towards the power companies on that issue?
First, let me handle the first issue. There is completely misconception that the present directive only benefits the private sector. In fact, if you see the segmentation, majority of the LOs, as said earlier, are with NTPC and state government. Private parties are only a small part of it. In fact, NTPC is the biggest gainer of this directive of new FSA signatures. Now coming to the gas issues. Question is, it has already been decided that the gas from the non-core sector will be diverted to the core sector. Now we have approximately 9,000 megawatt of gas-based generation coming up in next about 6 months over there, of which 4,000 will come by March end. Now these projects have clearly come up because they have been assured that they will be given gas. Now we are going back to government to ask for that gas. Now simple way is about 18 cubic meter of gas per day going to the non-core sector. That can be diverted to the power sector over there. And in future, all new gas production should be first given to the power, because power and fertilizer, as per the utilization policy, are in the core sector over there. I think EGOM will take a final call on these issues day after.
Just one final word, Mr. Khurana. I believe part of the discussions yesterday also centered around the fact that power companies felt import duty must not be implemented on power equipment. What is the primary concern there?
See, basic concern is increasing the cost of power. This recommendation came way back in February 2010 when the rupee was about 45 to dollar. Today, with the rupee depreciation, you already have an implied duty of about 15%. So add to it the 19%, you are actually taking the impact to 30%. Now this will increase the capital cost of projects and thereby increase the cost of power, which will be passed on to consumer. Today also the DISCOMs are unable to buy a power because they find power is expensive. So we are basically adding to more loss and giving consumer expensive power. Our effort has to be to make power as affordable as possible.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Appreciate the two of you joining in with your thoughts. That's some of the developments on the power front. That sector has been absolutely in the forefront. This morning, the market remains sticky. Just some struggle for the Nifty around that 5,500 mark. We'll take a break, come back and talk more about the market.